Because if 2.2 is clearly better on paper, then why does 2.1 still feel better in some ways? Let's start with the obvious, features. And yeah, this part is basically a free win for 2.2. It's easily the biggest update Geometry Dash has ever had. We got camera controls, shaders, platformer mode, time warp, new triggers, new visual effects. We even got a random trigger that literally created an entire gauntlet theme. So you can do completely insane stuff now. So in terms of pure features, 2.2 absolutely wins, no debate. But that's also where the problem starts, because more features don't automatically mean a better experience. In 2.1, building a good level was already hard, but it was manageable. There were limits. And those limits kind of forced creators to focus on the most important things: gameplay, readability, and consistency. But in 2.2, those limits are basically gone. There are so many triggers, so many effects, so many ways to manipulate the screen that it can feel overwhelming. Like, you can do almost anything now, but it doesn't always mean you should. And I think that's where the shift began, because once creators got unlimited tools, a lot of levels stopped trying to be fun first and started trying to be impressive first. Okay, that's a bit of an extreme example. Extreme, get it? Oh, okay. But I actually talked to some friends about this, and they brought up something really interesting. So, they said that start grinding in 2.2 actually feels better. And honestly, I kind of agree. Because easier levels usually focus more on gameplay, readability, and just being fun to play. They are cleaner, less overwhelming, and most of them don't go completely insane with effects. So for start grinding, 2.2 might actually be an improvement. But then we get to demons. That's where things start to feel weird again. Because a lot of the difficulty doesn't just come from the gameplay, it comes from the fact that you can barely see what's happening. You're not struggling because the clicks are hard, you're struggling because the level is trying to blind you with art, effects, movement and particles all at once. And to be fair, this isn't a brand new problem. Levels like I Spy With My Little Eye already proved in 2.1 that visuals could overpower gameplay. But the real question is, did this actually get better in 2.2? Not really. If anything, it got worse. Because now creators have even more tools, more freedom, more effects, more everything. And it pushes a lot of levels even further away from gameplay and more towards pure spectacle. And spectacle is cool, but Geometry Dash still has to be playable. And that leads into probably the biggest change of all, ratings. In 2.1, things were way simpler. You had featured and epic, and of course star rate. That was basically it. If a level was good, it got featured. If it was really good, it got epic. Simple. But in 2.2, we got legendary and mythic, and that completely changed the rating system. Because at first, those ratings felt almost impossible to get. Legendary and especially mythic felt super exclusive, like they were meant for only the absolute best of the best. And it gave them a lot of prestige. But after a while, people started complaining. A lot of creators felt like those ratings were too out of reach, too inconsistent, or just way too hard to get. And ever since then, it feels like the standards got lowered. Now we are getting way more legendaries, way more mythics, and because of that, they don't feel as special anymore. At first, they felt untouchable. Now they're starting to feel normal. And once that happens, everything below them shifts too. Featured and epic don't mean the same thing anymore. The whole scale feels different now. You can compare a low-end featured level from 2.1 to a high-end featured level from 2.2, and they barely even feel like the same rating. And I don't think that happened randomly. The community got bigger, way bigger. Geometry Dash didn't just return with 2.2, it exploded again. That means more creators, more competition, more expectations, and way more pressure on what a rate-worthy level is supposed to look like. Everything gets judged now. Every detail, every block design choice, every background, every effect, every transition. And because of that, creators keep pushing harder and harder just to stand out. And when I talk to people about this, their opinions were really mixed. Some people say Geometry Dash feels more alive than ever. And honestly, that's true. There's more activity, more ambitious levels, more creativity, more discussion. But other people say the game feels different. Not dead, not worse in every way, just different. Like something in the identity of the game shifted. Some people even said that a lot of modern levels focus more on quantity than quality. More movement, more effects, more visuals, more stuff happening every second. But not always more meaning. And I kind of get that, because a level can be technically impressive and still not be memorable to play. At the same time though, some of the best levels we've ever seen are absolutely from 2.2. So this isn't black and white. 2.2 didn't ruin Geometry Dash, it just changed what great level design looks like. And not everyone likes that new direction equally. And events made this even more extreme, because now every event feels like a competition to make the craziest possible level. And to be fair, event levels being over the top tier didn't start in 2.2. Even back in 2.1, we already had things like the World Gauntlet and the Discord Gauntlet, where creators were clearly trying to make levels feel bigger, flashier and more memorable. But 2.2 pushed that even further. Now we've got stuff like the Space Gauntlet, the NCS Gauntlet, and even the Random Gauntlet. And those events gave creators way more reasons to use every single tool they possibly can. So instead of just asking, is this level fun? Sometimes feel like people are asking, is this level impressive enough? And those are not the same thing. But at the same time, that's also what makes events so exciting. Because even if they can be overwhelming sometimes, they also make the game feel bigger, more alive and way more ambitious. Events give the community something to rally around. They create hype, they push creativity forward, and a lot of the time they make Geometry Dash feel more exciting than ever. So yeah, events definitely made the game more extreme, but they also made it more alive. And I think that's why they're so hard to judge, because on one hand they push creators towards spectacle over gameplay, but on the other hand they're also one of the reasons 2.2 feels so huge. They make the game feel bigger, weirder, crazier, and honestly, sometimes that makes it even better. And then there's Geode. And honestly, this is one of the biggest reasons why 2.2 feels so good right now. Because Geode doesn't make the game worse, it improves it a lot. It gives Geometry Dash a proper mod loader, makes mods way easier to install, and opens the door for features the base game just doesn't have on its own. And the best part is that it isn't just random chaos. Some of these mods generally make the game feel better. Take Geode, for example. That mod basically adds multiplayer to Geometry Dash. You can join servers, play with other people, and suddenly the game feels way more social than it ever did before. Or Jukebox. That one makes handling long songs way easier, which is honestly huge for a game where music matters this much. So when I look at Geode, I don't really see it as something that pulls Geometry Dash in the wrong direction. I see it as something that upgrades the whole experience. It makes the game more convenient, more customizable, and in some ways just straight up better. So for me, Geode is one of the clearest examples of how 2.2 didn't just add more content, it also created a much better foundation for the community. So yeah, I want to make one thing clear. 2.2 is a really good update. You can't deny that. It improved the game massively, added insane features and pushed creativity further than anyone expected. But at the same time, 2.1 and 2.2 feel so different that comparing them directly is actually kind of hard. And honestly, I'm probably biased, because I grew up with 2.1. Those are the levels I played the most. That's the style I got used to. That's what Geometry Dash feels like in my head. So when I look at 2.2, I don't just see a better version of the same game, I see a different version of the game. And especially for demons, I still prefer 2.1 a lot of the time. If I had to pick something to actually sit down and play, I'd probably go with a 2.1 Insane Demon over a 2.2 Visual Overload level. Not because 2.2 is worse, but because 2.1 often feels cleaner, more readable, more focused. 2.1 feels like a game. 2.2 feels like an experience. And neither of those are automatically better. It just depends on what you want. So what do you think? Do you prefer the classic 2.1 style or the new 2.2 direction?